This image right here was found in ancient Egypt. It's very typical in some ways of Egypt, but it's also very different compared to Egypt. So, in what ways is it the same as Egypt? Well, it's obviously the bird, Ba, and you can see that it represents the soul, or at least a manifestation version of the soul in the form of the body of a bird and the head of a human being. It also has breasts, which is strange, and it also has sandals on its feet. It's a very crazy design, but what's more crazy is its origin. So, like I said, it was found in Egypt. But one of the first things that people realized, first of all, it was amongst other things, but one of the first things they realized is that it's Meroetic, not Nubian, not blah, 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 Meroetic, meaning it came directly from Meroe and it's linked to specific Meroetic leaders and Meroetic movements at the time. Now, remember, during the Roman period of Egypt, people from Meroe had homelands directly inside of Egypt, which they stayed in. Herodotus talks about this as well. There were several islands inside of Egypt where Meroitic people, he called them Ethiopians, Meroitic people lived directly, and the way reason why he knew that they were Meroitic people was because they had direct communication in some cases with the Meroitics on the other side of the island. And of course, if we remember, the oldest telling of Meroitic connection is when the tale of Senawi, where the author says, "Imagine a man from Abu being separated from the Meroe regions as well." So remember that there's always been a connection from long time ago. Now you can see here this Egyptian formed one, which is the Ba bird as well, is not so far away from the other one. The other one's strange in the way it looks, but you must also consider the fact that it's from a different time. And as you can see, by looking at different ones from different eras, you get different versions of it. It's always a bird with the head of a human being, which is strange because if you remember, Egyptian gods seem to have the head be an animal and then the body be a human. But in this case, it's a little different. Perhaps another day we will focus on exactly what these spiritual things mean and why they have very similar names to other African cultures, and also the fact that they are Egyptians who set down to Ethiopia and so passed some of these traditions that we see even written down by the Ethiopians. Of course, art wise, when it comes to the art of the people, the Ethiopians or the Nubians or any of those people, whatever name you want to use, they have a culture that is deep within Egypt and represents Egypt in its true sense. The way that they are depicted might be a little different to the untrained eye, but if you really pay attention, you will see that for the most part they're depicted exactly the same. And the images that come out are actually so spectacular. I mean, the fact that some of the oldest images we have of black people are some of the, I mean, I have to say, darkest black people in the world, tallest, and they represent such a unique people in the world that it's identifiable. It's one of the craziest things in the world. And also it tells you it's strange because it's like some of these people, it's like I could pick them out today. I mean, look at this image. It's a flattering, non-flattering image. I'll tell you why it's flattering and not flattering. One, the face is perfect. This looks like a real human being. It's like they didn't exaggerate anything. This looks like a pure African who is at the maybe about in his 20s, and he's doing well for himself. He's got good hair and all of this stuff is going, it's pretty good. The only problem is the lion. So this is taken from an attack of the Nubians. So this is like an image showing Egyptians overcoming the Nubians. And so this is why it's a little bit negative. But again, one of the things is that the reason why I'm pointing this out is they emphasize that statue of the Ba bird, which I think looks the same as any other bird in Egypt, maybe with the exception of the other one having breasts. But this one, I mean, you will almost never see it anywhere, really. Have you ever seen it before outside of my channel? Isn't it beautiful? Now, I assume you just watched the video that I talked about Islam in. In there, I mentioned a person from Egypt who was a Coptic, and this Coptic person represents these type of people who were living in that region. So put all of these things together. By the way, look at how the nose juts out a little bit, while you can see that the lips are huge. Because some people they think your nose always has to be at the same level as your mouth. Otherwise, you're going to be completely different than the other Nubians. But it's not. I mean, these images are clearly Nubians, but they have variation in them, which tells you that these are based on individuals. What you're looking at now is not a template of a Nubian. You're looking at a specific Nubian whose specific face has been carved. And it's also fascinating that they've created fleshiness from stone. You can see the fleshiness at the front of his face. It's very strange. His earring, or perhaps ear hole, where a giant plug would go in, is also well represented. The hair. Now, this is the part that's actually confusing because this hairstyle is still very common within people living in Sudan today. Of course, one of the things that I remember in the beginning thinking this, I was like, they always make up an excuse for why something isn't something. I wonder why no one ever said this is actually a beanie and not his hair, because they always they have an excuse like, oh, it's they've got, they're actually exaggerating the features, they're wearing a wig, they're doing this, and in some cases they just let things be as they are. And I think it's because they gave up on the Nubians a long time ago, which, by the way, if you didn't know, they used to say that Nubians were white people. They're like black skinned white people. That used to be a thing, by the way. Now, of course, we could spend the entire time going through image after image of Nubians. These are engaged in war, but we could go through image after image. I think some of the images that I need to gather are the ones that are related to religion, of Romans and Nubians together in prayer. One of the favorite gods in Nubia was Isis, and the Nubians did represent Isis in their own way in a Nubian style over and over again throughout the histories, which I think is where the cults of Isis in Europe also started getting their real history. Because, of course, you can see during these periods, remember, this is during the periods where you start getting um, the Ethiopians fusing with Europeans against Middle Eastern powers. Looking at this image, you can see now why I was like, is it an earring or is it an ear hole? Look at the size of the hole of the ear on this person. If you remove the ring and leave the hole, you could mistakenly think the hole was a ring itself. But you can see with the ring, I don't know why it's swinging. It might be because the person is already walking. But if you look at the earring, it's giant. An interesting image is this one, found in the same place. As you can see here, let's read. As a brewer, Renef Senebdag was not a member of the upper class, but he was still able to afford a statue of respectable quality, a circumstance more common in the Middle Kingdom than in the earlier periods. The statue is likely made of steatite, an easily worked stone used for images of lower ranking individuals, which after firing imitates costlier materials. The small figure represents Renis Faneberg, daughter Ibia, and the text mentions a son, Debunub. Now, what I want you to focus on is his face. Stylistically, they're very similar. And one of the things that you know about ancient Egypt is that they tend to base things on people's faces. Now, here's where it gets a little tricky because, of course, some people might argue that the features aren't as pronounced, the African features in these people. They are. It's just, again, we're talking about variations, and everybody agrees that this is a Nubian, the Ba thing. So there is no debate or argument, but there is a difference in what people would expect versus what they get in real life. And I think the real reason why these things matter, at least to me, the physical appearance of these things, is because they're so easy to manipulate, which does bring me to a conversation I had about the Americas, which I will address in another video. Apparently, some people are very angry at me. I don't know why. But of course, there's so much more to go by inside of Egypt, especially in this time period where you start getting bilingual writing. So you can see here that this is not normal ancient Egyptian writing. This is already fused with European texts and even more than that, actually. And remember, at this period, there was also Jews moving in at this time. So you can read the translation of this ostracon. Now, remember, ostracon is like a piece of a thing. You can see it located on the side, so I don't have to explain it. Peter's Methus, son of Senporis, Pastor Forus of Neil, Amen the Great, to Panknobis, son of Panknobis, and Panknobis, senior, son of Peter Methus, and to Patanokis, son of Pesnokis. Damn, they're going in. The four Decanoi and the Pestaphoroi of the same God, greeting. I acknowledge to have rented from you the third part due to us of the koi of Amun and Osirismen mit of Sunni and Elephantine, the great gods, wine jars, 26 jars, 10 costal each, of sweet and clean wine, of harvest of year one, which will I will give back to you till Meroë of the present year first, without delay. And if the rest of this did not give you a glimpse that we're talking about a specific time, you can see there it's written Pontimus Senior, son of Petermithus. I have written year one of Imperator or Imperator Caesar Gaius, Pessinus Niger, Eastus Augustus Epia, issue of Potter Peter Mortis, son of Semporis. Yeah, everyone got a lot of P's in their name. There are thousands of these in Elephantine, by the way, little things that are basically contracts, promises to pay back things and move things around. Business texts, by the way, and a lot of them are in Austrian, of course. Later on, when paper becomes much more used, then a lot of these things are done through paper. Now, obviously, contracts are not some Egyptian invention that never existed in Africa. As you can see with these things that are called Ngisi, you see those little tack marks? Those are showing a contract. So every time someone makes a pact with someone, these things are kept by religious leaders, and then you inject it in, and you have your piece of it as well. And then they can come back and say, we made a contract together. And then if you need the proof, you go and get this little creature. As fascinating as it is to look at giant pyramids, sometimes you need to zoom in to the smallest things. And of course, at the time, even though the ancients of this time weren't that obsessed with race, they still sort of mentioned it. And you can see here in this contract, in the 15th year of Caesar, Permuthi, in Syene of the Thebaid, thus has sold Didymus, son of Aeson, a little slave girl, dark-skinned, by her name of Ne, or by whichever other name. She is called auctioned in the aforementioned year 15 through auction tax collectors Solon and the Caius Aquile for the price in the Ptolemaic silver drachmae, which the seller Didymus has received through NN, son of Dionysus, soldier, from Irenaeus, who has purchased through the auction tax collector. So this is obviously someone who's Greek, probably. Not liable to be rejected except for a defect. But if some defect arises, the seller will initiate legal action or will repay the price which he has received. This is pure property. And there's a reason why we have to read it, because of course we have to look at history exactly as it is, which again brings me to my video about the Americas, where people get upset because I don't want to, at least from where I see it, lie. Because of course, if I'm gonna lie, why not lie for the highest bidder? Then why not just start making videos and just be like, anyone who wants me to lie on their behalf, give me money. Which I promise you, there's a lot of right wingers who can't wait for me to, switch, and then suddenly the channel's gonna grow. And if you don't believe me, go watch any of my videos where, and I've stopped doing them because I was like, it feels dirty. Go watch any of my videos where I say something slightly negative about other creators and how certain things are not real. When I see those things, I'm like, oh, I should not be making these videos because they're getting 3, 4,000 views or 1, 2,000 views, and 90% of the comments are like, yeah, they're lying. It's like, okay, I need to go back to just more positive stuff. Anyway, I guess I think I've made my point on this video. Elephantine, one of the great places that were filled with Nubians, and then later filled with different types of people who came from different locations, but still today is represented by the people who lived there so long time ago.